Crystalline podcast. Crystalline podcast.
Conversations to inspire.
Hello and welcome to the Crystalline podcast, inspirational conversations with extraordinary folk. Today we had the pleasure of sitting down with Paul Devins. Enjoy.
Okay, welcome ladies and gentlemen. Today our guest is a good friend of mine. I met on the mats during my time in Australia. Paul Devins. He is well versed in critical thinking, a martial artist, musician and practitioner of body psychology. Paul is a wealth of knowledge and I'm looking forward to uncovering more about his journey and insights. So without further ado, Paul, my man, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. And yourself?
Oh yeah, fantastic. Can't complain, you know.
It's good.
Just getting ready for World War III and having a good time.
Brilliant.
So for the listeners out there, can you fill us in a little bit about your journey?
My journey. Well, yeah, where do I start with that? Do you mean sort of like maybe with the journey of kind of breaking away from the consensus and...
Well, I've got some more questions regarding that, which we can get to in a minute. But I just mean a bit about your background, like where you're from,
Right.
some sort of key life
Sure.
experiences, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess as a young child, I was started my education in a Steiner school and was at the Steiner school in Fremantle for all of my primary school years. And then I got moved out of that into a state high school, which was a pretty radical change and a big sort of adjustment for me. It was a very different approach to, I guess, some sort of learning, but a very different kind of mentality amongst the kids there as well. So I think that was a pretty significant sort of shift early on. And then I sort of was into, being in the ocean, surfing, skating, and being like pretty active. I didn't think of myself as someone who was very academically astute. I definitely didn't excel in any of the sort of academic subjects at school, and didn't really like high school apart from the social aspect. And I enjoyed phys ed and outdoor ed and sports, things that were physically engaging or practical, but the theory stuff and a lot of the stuff we were learning just didn't make any sense to me. As to, it had no connection to my life. I was just like, there's no thread connecting these things of history or whatever it was to me or to the present day. And I just kind of checked out, I think. And then sort of, got into a bit of a party scene and, immersed myself in that for a good couple of years. And I guess at some point I knew that was like temporary. I knew it was like not a good place to be long term, and it wasn't good for my soul. And it was it took me a while to sort of break away from it, because I kind of thought, oh yeah, like a bunch of my mates will like stop partying with me and we'll go on and do other things. And it sort of eventually became apparent that that was absolutely not going to be the case. And it was a very big part of our social group, was just going out and getting on it and going to raves and getting to that whole dance music. Prior, I was like pretty much just a metalhead, and yeah, it took me about a good year and a half to kind of break away from it, or to break away from the partying side of it. I started DJing and got into, playing records, and so I still sort of was associated with it for a while through, instead of being a participant, attending events, I was like sort of playing at them instead. And I enjoyed that. I still enjoyed it, but was like, pretty sober. And I had like a bit of a love-hate relationship with the whole dance music scene, because sometimes I'm just like, this is great, it's a lot of fun. And then other times I'd sort of think like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just playing music to a bunch of people who are just cooked. and then I'd swing back the other way and go, it would probably really depend on the event, really, because you could just have some less crazy, really nice events. Like, could be like at a Sunday arvo, sort of chill out sort of session where it's just good vibes and, good times, and that was great. And then, when you're doing this sort of like, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. time slot out at some crazy, doof or nightclub or something, you're just like, do I really want to be here? What am I doing? But yeah, I spent some time in traveling around in Europe in my sort of mid-20s. Never really knew what I wanted to do as like a profession. I sort of started off in kitchens, but that was way too hardcore and way too stressful. I did 6 years, but yeah. I ended up going over to Europe, being over there for 14 months. And when I came back, after being back for not too long, I got involved with something that I didn't really know much about at the time, that some friends of mine were encouraging me to go and check it out. And I got involved with something called a landmark education, and sort of went pretty hard.
What's that? Sorry.
Well, if you'd have had the time, I would have said something along the lines of that they sort of provide self-development and leadership programs.
Right. But
Afterwards, and afterwards, and I was there for approximately 2 years. I did their sort of their main program, which is called the Landmark Forum, just a 3-day program. Then I did the advanced course, and then I did the self-expression leadership program, which is a 3-month program, and then that overlapped with the introduction leaders program. I ended up after that doing the course supervisor program. So I was being trained to supervise the Landmark Forum, and by that stage, I started to see and experience some pretty unsavory stuff about how some of the people that were there were being treated and spoken to, and it was pretty disgusting.
was it
And
a cult?
I would have no problem saying absolutely. It's a cult. It's an open cult. And it's I learnt afterwards that it's very akin to the Church of Scientology. And the guy that founded it was, he was a Scientologist. And he apparently had a big blowout with L. Ron Hubbard for using the Scientology e-meters in his early version of what became the Landmark Forum. And that was pretty eye-opening, because I didn't really...
What was the moment when you were like, I need to get out of this then?
I was in that course supervisor program, and they have different levels. I think it was like a level 1, level 2, level 3. And once you're a level 3, you were then sort of basically qualified to supervise the landmark forum. The course was short on numbers. They weren't getting the amount of people that they would usually have. And so they were, basically short numbered. And we had a level 1 lady step up and say that she would take responsibility for supervising a landmark forum, obviously way out of her realm of experience. And so, she made some mistakes. And instead of sort of like rallying around and supporting her, the lady who was the center manager at the time and the landmark forum leader just turned on her and basically pulled her off the course and were very demeaning and humiliating in the way that they spoke to her, and then had her like cleaning the walls in like the office and in the center and just being just nasty bitches, basically. And I thought it was absolutely fucking disgusting that here's someone, because here's the thing about Landmark, like we're doing, they were doing programs, they run programs, courses, and seminars. When I did the Landmark Forum, there was over 100 people in it. I think when I did the advanced course, there was about 150 people in it. And they've got all kinds of seminars going on, on the side. And I can't remember how frequently the courses were running, but it's a pretty, it was a pretty big organization, and so you need a lot of people participating and making those events work. And I often ask people, like, if there's a company like that and they're in the middle of Perth, like on the business sort of main business strip of town, and they've got an office there, and they're running all these programs and seminars and 3-month programs, 8-month programs, how many staff do you reckon they have? And there's like 100 people and upwards in their main courses. Like, how many staff do you think they actually have?
I got no idea.
Yeah, well,
10?
there was 5.
Fucking hell.
5 people on the payroll in Perth. Everyone else.
What I'm failing to understand. What was their angle of what they were supposedly providing for people? Was it like spiritual information, like something sort of in the realms of Scientology like that, like Inu and aliens and all that shit?
There's no talk of aliens. It's a bit more like probably a little bit more sort of, they don't present themselves as a religion. So it's a bit more sort of formal and business looking. It looks very, professional. If you look on the website, if you look at their promo videos, it's very sort of, it looks more corporate and professional, right? But you can go and basically, the conversations or the content is kind of philosophical in nature. So you can basically, you'd have people there for all different kinds of reasons, whether it was like improving their business or, having a breakthrough in a relationship with a family member they haven't spoken to for 20 years or, just working on some area of their life, whatever, all these different people are bringing different things and sitting in this room together and having a conversation that's kind of like fundamental. It's not targeted like, well, here's how you're going to improve, making money with your business or time management or fixing your marriage. It wasn't specific like that. So they kind of say that anything you want for yourself or your life is possible through doing a landmark forum. That was like their little
big claim.
Motto. Yeah, their claim. Yeah, exactly. And so, when you're running programs as frequently as they were, with the amount of, people attending as they had, you got a lot of people making that happen. So everyone except for those 5 people on staff were there giving their time freely. And to see someone who's basically, they change the language, right? They don't say that they're people who volunteer. They don't like the word volunteer. They call them people who assist to get away from any, you know, like any negative connotation that being a volunteer might have, I guess. I don't know. But they just change the language slightly. But however, whatever you want to call it, they're not getting paid. They're there of their own volition. You know, they are getting training, that's fair. But to treat someone who not only stepped up into taking responsibility that was well beyond their level of experience, and, you know, to try and help this organization succeed in Perth, to see the 2 primary people involved turn on this person and speak to them like an absolute piece of shit and be demeaning and humiliating and just nasty, that was it for me. I just went, this is, and I'd had things before that, but that was the big sort of turning point where I was just like, you know what, I'm done with this.
So how old were you when you left? Like 27 or something?
29, maybe 28, 29, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea about that about you, to be fair. So, I mean, from our conversations, I would say you're probably one of the most awake people I've had the pleasure of meeting over the years. But I am curious to know, what was the moment you woke up, as they say?
Well, it was during that time,
Oh, really?
actually.
During the cult years?
It was during that time, yeah. Like I said, I'd gotten back from Europe and I was living with a friend of mine. And this would have been like where the door sort of like got cracked open. And I was just bumming around at home, like not having much to do that particular day or whatever. And this friend of mine was heading off to work. And before he bounced out the door, he goes, "Oh, I got something you might find interesting." And he like gets out this DVD and he goes, "Check this out." And he pops it in and the DVD player and left. And I was like, "Oh yeah, what's this?" And it was a film called Zeitgeist.
Ah.
You heard of that? You familiar with that?
Classic,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, I had this sort of section on astrotheology, I guess, which I kind of skipped over a bit of it. I was like, oh, what is all this stuff to do with religion and theology and stuff? And I remember thinking, this is interesting, but, you know, what's next? And I remember skipping through a little bit of that. Later, that would become one of the most fascinating subjects to me, but I didn't really know what I was looking at so much at the time. And then I had all this stuff on 9/11. And then I was like glued. I was like, what is all this? You know, so I don't really know anything about anything. Didn't really buy into, I didn't really buy into like what was being sort of, you know, sold to us as how I always kind of thought, surely there's more to life than this, but I didn't really have an answer. So I think I just sort of checked out and just went into like hedonistic party mode. I was just like, well, fuck, I don't know, I'll just do this. But, you know, and then the last section of it was on banking and on like fractional reserve banking. And I was just like having my brain like exploding. Like I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it all. Like the banking thing took me a while. I really had to watch that over and over to really grasp what was being said. It was so sort of simple in a way that I couldn't get it. Like with the creation of money, like out of nothing. It took a while for me to drop the old idea that money had, you know, some sort of value to it, and to realize that it just didn't have any value, and it was just, you know, basically lent into existence. I really struggled with grasping what the fuck is being said here. And then it sort of just had this penny drop moment where the old idea faded away and I started to really grasp what was being said. And I went to other sources after that. I don't think it was a great it's anything that opens the door is great, but I would probably have a lot of criticisms about those films now, and maybe the intention of the guy making them, because he had some pretty suspect sort of solutions. I realized later on. At first they sounded all great and utopian and that, and then I was like, oh, hang on a minute, you get further down the path and you look back and realize, oh, some of this stuff's like, they did like this little sleight of hand trick where they present you some legitimate issues and then they give you these like false solutions. um but there was still a lot of good stuff in there. It got me intrigued and interested, and that was where that started, and that was while I was doing that landmark stuff as well. And the other thing, landmark definitely has this like new age like jive going on with it as well. Because I remember trying to speak to some of the people there about the Zeitgeist film I'd seen. I was like, oh, you got to see this. And I remember like the center manager going like, no, I'm not going to pay attention to that because then you're just giving it more like power or something, one of these weird ass like new age bullshit ideas that like if I just bury my head in the sand, then it's not happening. So it's like, and at the time it just absolutely threw me. I was like, hang on a minute, are you telling me if I ignore this, it's going to go away? Out of your goddamn fucking mind. What planet do you exist on? That doesn't make any sense. That never made sense to me. And now I know a bit more about some of that new age stuff, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, it started there, and then just in a very sort of crude and amateur way, just started trying to sort of get familiar with some of this very foreign but very fascinating information, and trying to find, it's like trying to work your way through a jungle because there's so many nonsense rubbish voices out there that are just peddling, probably agent provocateurs, just peddling, just get ready to take you off down the garden path, down to some cul-de-sac dead end, and you end up pumping a lot of time and energy into some of these non-issues.
Well, I've got some more questions of this kind of ilk, but first I'm very interested to know more about this body psychology. Like, what is it? When did you hear about it? How did you get into it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was the body psychotherapy.
Psychotherapy. My apologies.
Yeah. That came online a little bit later. I always had, or at least from my early 20s, I'd say I started to have a interest in, thinking and psychology, I guess, in a very sort of crude sort of way. I didn't really know much. I didn't really know that was what my interest was, but things would sort of appeal to me. I'm like, oh, I want to learn more about that. Or what's being said over here? That's really fascinating. And when I guess this sort of grew out of the same sort of inquiry from what Zeitgeist started. Initially it was about conspiracy and 9/11 and all this sort of thing, and then when you start kind of like pulling that thread, it just takes you off into all these different areas if you just follow where the knowledge that interests you sort of takes you. And I came across a guy quite early on who I still hold in extremely high regard today, and that's a fella called Michael Tsarian, and he dealt a lot with psychology, and I found that fascinating. And he knew of a lot of really great therapists who are also authors and written some fascinating books that weren't like super well known. And so I started, purchasing the books and reading them. And it was really through his work that I came across the body psychotherapy stuff. He spoke a lot of a guy called Wilhelm Reich. And Reich is a fascinating character. I've only read one of his books. They're quite big, and he's definitely a more technical writer. So it's not as easy to read as some of the other authors, but Reich, his work was just pretty profound. I thought what I read was, and the main motive, I guess, for me getting into that was really to understand some of the struggles and difficulties that I was having. Was to get some, I don't know how to really, I was like having some pretty tough times and not understanding why. I didn't really think my childhood was like that traumatic or that anything really that significant had happened. And some of the experiences that I was having were so disturbing and painful that I didn't really know what the hell was going on or where this was even coming from. And so I started to, I'd been reading some stuff before that, some more like Jung and a little bit of Freud, and I kind of thought, all your problems are like in your head, It's like, what's the body got to do with any of this? Like psychology is about your head, and about your mind. And then when I started reading Reich and then some of so Reich was a student of Freud and was considered, Freud's protege for a while he was still in Germany and still studying under Freud, I think. I don't know the exact timeline, but at some point he sort of ended up becoming a very controversial figure. He ended up in America to basically, once Hitler had gotten into power in Germany, he was one of the people that left. And he still had a lot of like momentum and was held in pretty high regard, I think, when he arrived in America. And he bought a big piece of land there and set up his institute there and had a school there and was teaching people. And then things started to get very controversial around him, and his work, went so far outside of the traditional, like, sort of confines of traditional psychoanalysis that he became considered a very controversial figure, and those bodies sort of didn't want to associate with him anymore. And he started having some difficulties in the States with the FDA. And anyway, that's another whole story, but he was one of these, like, sort of rebellious types, but he was interested in healing people. And he really brought the physical body into the therapeutic process. So it's no longer just talking therapy.
It's become
now,
like, would you say, sorry, has it become more like a somatic thing at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So he would work with people's breathing. He would work with the physical body, with the muscular tension, which he called armoring. That people were literally armored against, as I understand it, basically their own feelings. And so, someone who is not wanting to feel, ends up tense, because when certain areas are tensed up and you've like diminished the breath, it's like the breath is like the billows on a fire, or the oxygen going into a fire. When it's pumping, that fire is like hot and very alive, and it's like, if you want to cut off feeling, you can go tense and tight, diminish that breath, and it's like, you might have cut off, the bad feelings, but you can't just pick and choose. I mean, it'd be fantastic if you could, but you're just cutting off feeling, period. You know, so then you have all the problems and issues that come with that. And if you're wanting to be a healthy sort of vital, alive human being, then you have to find a way to accept all of your feelings and not be heavily suppressing that part of yourself, because that is a part of yourself.
So how long does a typical session sort of run for to come to some sort of resolution with it?
What, like a body psychotherapy session with Reich?
With anyone, like if someone came to you, would you be able to help them through that kind of thing?
I haven't worked, apart from the stuff we did in the course. I've never worked with anyone one-on-one in that capacity. And in terms of putting a time frame on it, I don't think you could, because each it'd be like a case by case sort of situation, as I think all therapy is, because you're dealing with an individual at the end of the day whose situation isn't going to be the same as anybody else's. Their life experience is unique to them, and how they've responded to it is unique to them. So I couldn't say, and it would really depend on the level of. There's just so many things that kind of come to bear, and I don't know if there's ever like really a complete healing of things as such. That with trauma, I don't know, maybe there is, but I kind of feel that I guess it would depend when the trauma's happened as well, because I think there may be a bit of a difference between trauma that's happened, like if you're a war veteran or something like that, and then trauma that's happened when you're in your early stages of literal like development, like when your body is developing, your brain is developing, your nervous system is developing. If that child is exposed to a prolonged period of trauma and their whole being is adapting to that situation, I don't know that there's like ever a like complete healing of that because of the environment they've grown up in. But I think that there can be an awareness. You can bring an awareness to it. You can have ways of managing it and ways of regulating your nervous system so that when you do feel overwhelmed or, anxious, or that fight or flight response is like activated, you can sort of have a context for it, or rather than just getting lost in it. So that because I think there's a world of difference between someone who has that self-awareness about their history, about their environment, about what their parents may have been like, or whatever the environment was that, so then they can kind of go, all right, this is not, I'm not under threat right now. Something from the past has been triggered and I am safe, and I need to like basically manage and regulate myself now. But if you don't know that, then you don't have the tools to make your life work as well as someone who does, I guess. That's the difference. So I don't know if there's ever a healing from that kind of trauma, but there is an integrating and bringing it into your conscious awareness and trying to embrace it.
Would you say it's changed your life for the better?
it definitely helped me when I was in a real dark place. When you met me in Margaret River, that was not an easy part of my life.
Yeah, especially when you had to live with me.
The better parts, actually.
Do you or did you find during those times things like the martial arts, like jujitsu? Do you find that helps your psychology?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I um had very little, yeah, the jiu-jitsu is a game changer for me. First of all, the confidence with fighting, and like fighting I used to always find very um intimidating. If someone was being aggressive, or because I would have no clue what I would do. I'd never really been in a fight, so I didn't know how I'd go in a fight. And if I was to get in one, I didn't have any fighting experience. And I thought if I was upset enough to actually engage in a fight, can you hear that dog?
Nah.
No? All right, cool. Because he's asleep and he's snoring. Anyway, if I was upset enough to get involved in a physical confrontation, I just thought the worst thing in the world would be to get your ass beat. It would just suck. So on a more of a practical level, yeah, like it gives you a level of confidence for sure. To know at least what I would do in that situation should it arise. But I think a bigger part of it for me was having that camaraderie and with other good men. I think that was like missing from my life a lot because I don't really have, my dad around, and when he was, it wasn't a great relationship. So I realized, when I was older, I started having these questions like, what is masculinity? What is a man? How the fuck do you be like a good man, especially if you didn't have a great role model growing up, or actually had a lot of, you know, difficulty with that person who would normally fulfill that role. I used to hate authority. I used to hate anyone that represented that father figure, rebel against it. But at the same time, there's like this like longing for it. It's like you need that older, wiser man who gives a shit in your life. And when it's not there, for a boy or a girl, it's pretty catastrophic, or can be pretty catastrophic. And on the other side of that, I was surrounded by a very left feminist like kind of environment on my mum's side, which is not good for a young boy's identity either. And all of the unspoken messages about men. So, I found going to a gym, like the idea of it was probably just like intimidating for ages. I did do some martial arts when I was really young, and that was great. But once I was in high school, that all came to an end. And so to sort of finally get myself into that has been awesome. And I still do it consistently to this day. And it's always challenging, and it's always, it's just awesome.
Yeah, I miss my jiu-jitsu club back home, and I miss the Margaret River days, especially in that old Japanese place that we
Oh,
used
the
to do it
karate, the
in.
karate club.
Yeah,
That's right.
I
Yeah, they
forgot
got
about
their own
that.
gym now. So
Oh, yeah, I've seen the pictures. I was looking through some photos and I saw old photos of me when I was really skinny and had long hair back when we met.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, I was going through. without getting too into it, I was going through a pretty low point in my life in Australia, to be fair. But going to jiu-jitsu was like, that was like my therapy. That was like my anchor to like normality. That was like the one thing I looked forward to each week. So it was kind of a pleasure to have that. And we had obviously Dimmy in the house, crazy Frenchman.
He was a weapon, eh?
And my knee's still never been the same since that. I don't know if you remember.
That drunk roll?
Yeah, Australia Day, and he popped my knee, and it's still never been the same.
Was that in my lounge room?
It was on the fucking floor in the lounge when we had the mats in there.
Yeah, I remember that.
It took a year for it to stop hurting after that day.
Oh, dude, that's rough.
I know.
You actually held your own pretty good that time, I thought.
Only because he was fucking licked.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So, sort of going in a different direction now. I mean, I wasn't actually aware until you mentioned it on the phone the other day that you had a YouTube channel. So I had a little look, and I sort of went over your 3-part series on the Port Arthur massacre, which is incredibly well laid out and incredibly detailed. And you come from a very non-biased point of view, I think. And people should definitely check that out if they're interested. And I mean, you said you weren't into like reading, and you sort of touched on the zeitgeist stuff, but how did you get to that level of research? Because you're incredibly well researched in that.
I don't know. I don't. Maybe I just wasn't as dense as I thought I was. Well, okay. More seriously, I think when I did start buying books and reading stuff, especially some of the more occult publications, like to give an example, Manly Palmer Hall's The Secret Teaching of All Ages.
Oh yeah, old Manly P Hall, yeah.
Yeah. I would get frustrated. I would there was so much I didn't know. And with a lot of the books, I ended up basically with the book in one hand and like a dictionary in the other. And I wouldn't go past, if there was a word I didn't understand in a paragraph or didn't know, I'd look it up. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense to me. And so there was a lot of looking up words that I didn't know, and also taking the time to become familiar with what were really foreign concepts. And I kind of think that process of really persevering with things that are challenging you and that are kind of making you feel uncomfortable, and then you get that little breakthrough, you go, oh, I remember what that word means now, or like finally understand what they're talking about, especially when it's to do with all this like symbolism and stuff like that. I think it's like working out for your mind. And then you can become, it's like I'm paying attention to the details. Even if it's really easy to read a thing and not even notice that you didn't understand a word in the sentence. But then like picking up, it's like, I didn't understand that. Or I might have understood all the words, but I didn't understand really what was being said. So I'm going to read it again. And I still don't get it. I'm going to read it again. What am I not getting about this paragraph? And then reading it until the penny drops and going, okay, now I see. And I think that just, going through that sharpens your mind, maybe. I mean, I'm just kind of speculating here. But something happened where I went from thinking, I was just an average, mediocre student at school. Well, I mean, there's a lot that can be said about the education system, just leaving all that aside, just these fundamental ideas about myself, to realizing that I was actually quite good at grasping information and assessing it. Because, when you start doing some of this more, research to do with like whatever, political things or some of this conspiracy stuff, you have to basically, there's a lot of BS out there. There's a lot of misinformation. And I've seen people that would sort of start to get interested in it, and then they just basically throw it down and go, I can't tell what's what. And it's like, well, you got to persevere. Like, I kind of think of it, a metaphor would be like looking for gold, right? You got to get the mud out the way, you got to get the dirt out the way, you got to get the rocks out the way, you got to get all the debris and all the shit that isn't gold out of the way. And then you got to be able to tell the difference between fool's gold and real gold. And then once you can do that, now you know how to get to the truth. And you've got to get rid of all the, contradictory stuff, all the voices that you can identify a conflict of interest. It's like, no, they're out. That's out. That doesn't make sense. All the nonsense until you're left with what's solid. Okay, this person's saying this. I can verify it. I can't find any conflicts of interest in this character. They're not getting paid. They lost their career. They lost their job. They've had the world sort of turn on them and hate them. What are they getting out of this? Oh, they're committed to telling their, experience as it really was, and they lost everything. And what they're saying is verifiable. Well, until I find something that contradicts this, I have to go with this. Even if it contradicts my original beliefs, you've got to be able to trash your ideas and throw them into the wastebasket when the information that's coming your way does that. And I feel like there's a lot of people that don't like doing that either. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think you need more this day and age. You need more than just a tinfoil hat. You need like a full tinfoil suit of armor of God. And knowing that you have now, you've incredibly well read, what would you say some of the most profound books that have shaped you that you would also recommend to the Crystalline community as must-read books if they have not already?
Well, to be honest, I haven't seen any of your other episodes. I don't know have you mostly dealt with health related stuff?
Well, health is. I feel my personal opinion is. I mean, we don't get heaps of listeners, and I know a few of them. So that's who I'm always targeting it to. And most people who listen to it, I would say, are somewhat awake, to be quite honest with you. But I feel health is kind of like, to me, is a preliminary requisite before we as a community can do something greater. Like, if you're still buying their shit, if you're still filled with metal, if you're still poisoned essentially, and you're not operating at like maximum capacity, how can we then go and plan to build some next level out of the system whole alternate reality if you're still eating McDonald's and you're still shooting up Ozempic and all this crap?
Yeah.
I feel like this is my first job, is to get everyone healthy, and then once we're all healthy, then we can go make healthy babies and do all that shit. Have a farm.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I guess, I've read such a massive, so many different genres, but if you're going to talk about healthy babies,
it could be on any subject, like literally just like top 3 books that you would say anyone who's like on this journey, not just health, but just being completely burst open. Like, what would you say? You have to read these things.
Oh man, there's so many.
Or if you fancy, you could send me a text list and I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, sure. I can do that for sure. On that, look, just because we've mentioned health, like, I have to say that Suzanne Humphries' Dissolving Illusions
Banger.
was an epic book that I thought might be sort of dry or very, technical or not interesting. And I smashed that.
That was a fantastic book. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an epic book, and she's just an awesome human being. Uh,
Yeah, I was half tempted to like email her to get her to come on, but then I saw she was on Rogan the other day. I was like, she's with the big boys now.
I would email her anyway.
Oh,
Why-
what's the harm, eh?
Yeah, what do you got to lose? Nothing.
But
And I'm like,
I read that during COVID, and I was like running around like buying it for people, waving it at people like you need to read this.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, another one that always jumps to mind, and this is on a completely different, topic, but after doing the landmark thing, and then that's where the research started, because I started trying to learn a little bit about landmark. And in that process, I very quickly came across the Church of Scientology. And then I was like, oh, okay, I've heard of it. I don't really know anything about it. But that is a pretty heavy and interesting area of research. But I read a book called The Ultimate Evil by a guy called Maury Terry. And that, if you sort of want to get a little bit of an insight into the kind of, I don't know, I guess it's deals with mind control, I guess, Satanism, and the Son of Sam. It's a really, he's an investigative journalist who was sort of looking into the Son of Sam and realized that the official narrative was not adding up. Like, it was just not even close. And he ended up getting the case reopened. And not only is it a fascinating subject, but he's a really good writer. And that book always jumps to mind. I mean, that's maybe not a subject that too many people want to
Yes,
read about.
heavy black pill vibes.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff, but that's something I've read a lot about. And like I mentioned to you in our call the other day, ended up sort of going on a bit of a, recently kind of trying to learn a bit about this process church, which he has a whole chapter on the process in that book. And there's sort of like, it sort of said that the process were involved in the Son of Sam. They're involved in the Manson case. They're a death cult, if you want to call it that. They were involved in both the Kennedy assassinations, and they're a branch of the Church of Scientology.
Interesting. Yeah,
They're
I've
meant
not heard
to,
of that.
right. On paper they're meant to look like they're not. That they splintered away. That the couple that created the process were like no longer associated with the process, but there's people that say no, absolutely not. They were always a part of the Church of Scientology because they were never subjected to fair game, which Scientologists like to do to the people that leave, right? But they were protected from that. So,
That's
and that
interesting. Yeah.
basically these groups are, whether you're talking about, I don't know, the Jim Jones, Manson, any of these cults. All right, so there's another name I'll mention. What's his name? Just one second. Oh yeah, David McGowan. David McGowan wrote a book I finished recently called Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and he wrote another book called Program to Kill, which I started and just sort of had to put down for the time being. But his thoughts on it are basically that all these cults are basically intelligence assets, that they're not out there, operating just independently. Most of them have some pretty heavy duty connections to intelligence orgs, whether it's the CIA or, what was it? It's just like, what a coincidence that fucking Julian Assange was, one of these kids that was in the Anne Hamilton Byrne cult that was also called The Family here in Melbourne. And then he just happens to be one of these people that pop up on the world stage. It's just like, nah, like that's like, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I no longer believe that he is a, free thinking, independent, genuine person. I think he's a severely traumatized, probably compromised human being that is playing a role or is there to fulfill a role, but he's not, none of these people are leading anyone to their, freedom, or I don't know, just the whole politics thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had my reservations about him, but I will say, like, when he did the whole Pizzagate thing during the first Trump election,
Mm-hmm.
that was a big game changer. Like, but
Mm-hmm.
now it's like there's so many down the rabbit hole. There are so many things that aren't rabbits that are leading you off into different directions. But I mean,
Yeah.
we lived together just before the Rona episode, which was quite a monotonous episode, I must say. But the world has changed a lot since then. So where do you personally see the world going at this moment in time?
Well,
That's a big question,
well,
but
wherever I see it going is not very particularly pleasant, to be honest. At the moment, I'm hoping that things change, but and I don't want to sound like a pessimist, but I don't know. Do you know about this whole sort of you know, what do they call these technocratic kind of characters that are what would you call it? This, I don't know, that rubbish they're talking about at the World Economic Forum about
yeah,
owning nothing, being happy,
yeah,
introducing the digital ID, a blockchain currency, a social credit score, these 15-minute cities, just this mega surveillance and destruction of, your individual rights and your private property rights. And I've been sort of saying that just on my little social media platform thing for ages, and I don't even know if people really are grasping what that actually means. Or it sounds so far out, that it's like, come on, man, that's ridiculous. But are you familiar with Rosa Corey, this woman that was just,
no,
oh man, she's just like so. She was awesome, man. She was just talking about this whole, what sustainable development really, the implications of it, what it really was all about, because it was in her field of expertise, and she came across it because she was like a land evaluator and an expert witness, and she worked for, I don't know, the state of San Francisco or something, and she was basically trying to find out what land was worth and what people could do with it. And she just said it was just becoming increasingly difficult to actually value the land because people were being so restricted with what they could with what they could do on there. And she ended up discovering, this UN publication or this UN plan called Agenda 21, which is, anyway, she basically spoke about that better than anyone I've ever
okay,
heard. And then I started seeing it being like implemented in the city planning because I was working in construction, and all this stuff she was talking about was, I could see it in reality. And like Margaret River is a great sort of, you want to move out of the cities and move to somewhere like Margaret River. And I noticed that some of the new constructions were built wall to wall. Who wants to move out of the city into, 3 hours south of the city into the countryside and live wall to wall with your neighbor? You can't walk down the side. You've got no garden. You've got none of this, and she talked about this like at length, how the whole structures of these towns and cities were going to change, and it was all to do with like that you could be seen anywhere with the surveillance, with how close you were to your neighbors, what was going to happen with the roads to make having a car really inconvenient. So they're putting these bike paths everywhere, reducing the sizes of the roads, all these things being done under the auspices of climate change and saving the planet. And so really it was to, she talked about these plans. I'm not doing her justice or this subject justice right now, but basically to get people into these smart cities, to get people out of the rural and remote areas, and and then do that with basically just drying up the funding. It's like we don't need to force people out of there at gunpoint or anything like that. We're just going to stop, maintain the infrastructure. So we're not going to pay for the libraries. We're not going to pay for the roads. It's not going to get, you're not going to pay. So these people will be forced out of there and they'll move to the cities. And then I started seeing these things popping up, which is literally, she's talking about people being stacked and packed, where you've got all these living, apartments on the top of a shopping, complex down the bottom, and nearby is like a train line or something. So it's like you won't need a car. You're not going to have a car, and you won't need a car, and you won't even care because you'll be able to get to wherever you need to go. And they've got these like electric scooters everywhere, which I felt like were just sort of, buttering people up, like, oh, look at this is cool. Yeah. But it started with that, and then all this tech stuff just got more and more hectic, like so quickly. And it's kind of led on from that, because they're still sort of bringing that stuff in under the same, pretext that it's going to be saving the planet from climate change or some, nonsense.
I mean, one thing that kind of instills a bit more optimism in me personally at the moment is, like, I noticed during COVID, as soon as they were like, right, you need a vaccine passport to be able to do anything, within minutes, you could get a fake one on the black market that was legit, that worked. You can smuggle drugs and guns into any country you want. There is, I believe wholeheartedly in the black market. If they bring out chips and cities, like in England, they put out the ULEZ thing. Have you seen that?
What's that?
So
No.
they put these in London, and I think they might be in some other cities, but I know it's in London for sure. But basically, they're these fucking next level speed cameras, but they monitor your registration, like how much distance you've driven and stuff,
Right.
outside of your house, and then you get fined for shit like this. But as soon as they started, the guys got the disc cutters out and just been cutting them down, and they have not stopped. So I think it's like, if we only, I just always see there's gonna be there has to be a solution. People will work something out. Like if you can fly drones and like fly drugs into a prison, like, we'll work something out. That's what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's definitely solutions. Absolutely, I'm all for that. But my concern is that I don't see. I don't know. It'd be interesting to get your thoughts on this. Is that okay? I'll just tell you what I'm thinking, then get your
Yeah. Shoot.
your thoughts on this. Is with most things, I kind of feel like you just do your thing, but there's some things that come about where what the collective is doing affects you, right? Like, and still, like, I can't do anything about that because people are going to do whatever they do. But and with this particular thing, I feel like there needs to be a critical mass of people like opting out. That's the solution, is opt out. Don't get your home full, is to not have these smart devices like, well, okay, it's not as simple as that. Opting out, it's like if they really gonna want to introduce a social credit system and a digital currency, it's like you have to have your assets in your hands physically before they do that. Otherwise, people have so much to lose. It's like, I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose my car, I'm going to lose my job. I can't do anything. I can't function in the society because I did something rebellious and now, my wallet has been switched off and I can't pay the bills and blah, 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 all this stuff. And it's like, if people aren't sort of getting out of these systems, if they're still dependent on them, like, I guess there's two ways of looking at COVID, and the way I sort of look at it, there's a lot of people that didn't want to get those jabs that got them, right? Now, one way of thinking is, yeah, but they're not going to do it again. The other way of thinking is, no, that just set a precedent. What happens when there's more leverage and more pressure? You're just worried about losing your job. What if you're going to lose all of your money, your house? You're going to lose your ability to function in the society. Well, you got the jab. You didn't have the spine to resist that. Are you going to resist this? Psychologically, I don't see it. And that, I don't know, and it sucks because I don't want to be a pessimist, but that's the reality, because so many people will still scoff at you trying to talk to them about this stuff, and which I don't really bother doing. I'll have but the conversations I have are with people who already know about this stuff. So what difference does that make? But in order to really make a difference, I feel like there needs to be a majority of people who are opting out, because there's going to be a need to create alternative systems, like completely alternative systems. And that's pretty, it's a pretty big endeavor. It's a pretty big undertaking to sort of step out of the life that you've been familiar with for, 20, 30, 40 years that you've been alive. It's like, what, I can't go shopping at Coles. Like, what do I do now? I've never grown a tomato in my life. Like, what the hell do I do? I don't know how to, live outside of the system that's provided for us. And I'm not saying it can't happen. It can. But I don't see people really even having the awareness of what's coming down the line. That's how I feel currently.
To me, I agree. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think it's a combination of things. So, one, I think it would work, but you'd need to basically get the cream on the top of the milk. So, like, if the milk is all the awake people in the world, but the cream is like the people that would, as my good friend who's coming on the show later on today once said during COVID, he was like, I would rather nail my penis to a burning building than take that jab. And like those kinds of people, like, that are willing to just not, like, I will fuck all money off, you are not giving me that. Those people, I think, in my head anyway, the utopian idea would be get all of those people, somehow work out, because speaking to a lot of other people who have tried similar things, you have infiltrators, they fuck the job, they start poisoning people, all this malark. So somehow you filter out the fucking the scoundrels, like in They Live, that ginger bird with the weird eyes, she ends up ratting on everyone. Somehow filter out all these people, get enough of them together before all this happens, buy a big enough piece of land somewhere where we can buy the land and then using some law shit take it out of the maritime thing so it becomes like our own country, put some fucking fences up, somehow let it not turn into a cult, and people sort of can get along without it turning into like a weird orgy male hierarchy nonsense, and like have our own houses and food.
Yeah.
And then wait for this all to blow over, and then I don't know. That's like, I can't see any other way. But
No, I'm on board with that.
the one thing I would say, I can see
Yeah.
this. If that doesn't happen, and we have, let's say, right, you, Paul, Cheetle, you guys have been hella mad on the whole conspiracy front. We looked at your internet. You guys are getting banned from banks and the chips and everything, and we're going to turn off all your shit. So I would suggest, I would imagine there'd be some guy out there that would do it for the money, that would take the chip in his head. He'd take that mark of the beast and he would exchange my apples at the market for the thing that I want through their system, and then take a cut if we needed stuff. That is, I don't know, go to the shop. Like if I've got like 1,000,000 apples and we need some toilet paper or some shit, or a hatchet, he can. But yeah, I mean, even
But
that.
if there's a social credit system in place, and then he is surveilled making this exchange with you, and that affects his social credits, is he going to want to? This is what I've thought. I was like, the rat lines of the past have always been able to exist because they had privacy, and they could do these things in secrecy. You no longer have any privacy. Who's really going to want to get involved in a rat line when it's going to cost them in this way, that this kind of thing's never existed before? How is a rat line going to exist?
What about like the Amish? Do you know what I mean? Apart from the like weird ancestral kind of like hijinks going on there, apart from that, which is a big but, they seem to be doing all right. Like they got the milk, they got the fucking meat, they got the they're just chilling. They don't need electricity.
They do. Yeah, they do.
We need like Amish 2.0, you know?
I would love to like brainstorm this stuff more, because I think it's just like the only thing I can think of is complete independence, because without that digital ID, I don't think of it as a system you can have like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It doesn't work like that. It's like you're either in or you're out. And if you're out, you can't function in it in any capacity. And the people who are in it risk to lose their ability to function in it if they deal with people outside, because it's going to affect the social credits. They're going to be surveilled in some way. They're going to get, boo, you did the wrong thing. You sinned against the digital god.
Have you seen it in China, where if you do something wrong, and let's say you've done something wrong, and I rat on you, I will get better credit. How fucking that's evil, man. That is so evil.
This is what I'm talking about. Like you can't rely on it for anything. You have to, like, people who don't want to borrow that have to create a completely independent system from the ground up. That is my thinking on it currently.
I think the legalese aspect of it is essential. I mean, I do not possess the patience, time, or probably even the brain capacity to really comprehend it as another language. Like when we were being a bunch of pikey reprobates and we're trying to go all common law stuff, I know you've got a bit of experience with it as well, but it's just such a vast and well-designed maze to keep the layman out of it. But I think that really is the key, because if we could get enough land and then take it out of that system, they don't have any jurisdiction there, and then it would literally be like, you want to come here, we will shoot you in the face. Not that I like support violence or anything, YouTube, but I just hypothetically.
No, you support self-defense.
Yeah, a bit of martial arts. Baking a cake.
self-defense can involve firearms as well, you
I guess so. I mean, it's all hearsay from allegedly.
know. Yeah, well, that's my kind of thoughts on that. I don't know. It's a pretty big um sort of area. It's a pretty unpleasant sort of area to look at. But the technology things just come like hurtling. Like I never in a I was saying this to one of the lads at the gym the other day. I was like, when I saw The Matrix when that came out, I would never have thought the future. I was like, this is complete, really great science fiction. Like that's it. And then within, really quite a short space of time, it's like, holy crap, that's like really, you know, kind of not far. I guess you could use it as a metaphor. It's not going to look like quite like that, like you're in this pod, plugged into the matrix, but it's not far off.
Have you ever come across this whole, how you say, like this whole loosh harvesting soul thing?
What's that?
So basically, that we're in a sort of like the Matrix, less like you say with the pods, but this reality, the reincarnation cycle, we're kind of just sort of stuck in this three-dimensional space when we're actually like higher beings, and that there's some like entity, parasitic entity that's without beyond our like physical spectrum that we can't see, but they like war, they like all the negative stuff, and they're like feeding off that.
Yeah, I've heard those kinds of ideas,
I
and
mean,
I
I'm not
don't
saying
know.
I'm fully in that camp, but like I
Right.
often wonder like how real is the Matrix?
Yeah, I mean, those things, all you can really do is speculate
For sure, for
because
sure.
I've never seen, I kind of try and stick closer to things that I can,
100%.
know. Yeah. And so those sorts of things can, be interesting to ponder on. But ultimately, ultimately, I kind of don't really go there so much because I don't really think you need some like entity to account for what's going on here because human beings have the capacity for profound good and profound evil. And maybe I'm not saying that those things don't exist either, because there's definitely a whole world of stuff going on with some of that, dark occult shit that would
Yeah.
definitely sort
I
of.
mean, it's like the line of thinking I get from it is these people that are allegedly controlling us, they worship some goat cunt and other weird entities and hate people like Jesus, for example. If
Mhm.
spiritual beings and demons and all that is nonsense, then why are they so invested in it? That's what I don't get. If it's just like immaterial nonsense, is it just complete placebo into whatever? But I don't know. Seems odd to me.
Well, maybe the answer is something along the lines of it's very real to them. That your beliefs, your perceptions, um, I mean, there is definitely energy in the universe, and that energy can manifest in like, creation and destruction. And I have no problem accepting that. And if these people are sort of like aligning themselves with a dark, destructive force, because it's easier to do that than to heal yourself and to try and do good in the world. I mean, why bother healing yourself? That's what's that? Wow, what's that fucking? It's easier to harm another than to heal oneself, right? So yeah, I've thought a lot about that. Because I've read so much on this hideous cult shit, on child abuse, on mind control, on a lot of the early stuff is like just heavy duty trauma. It's like, who inflicts that? And because I've just become a father recently, it's like, and you look at this tiny little innocent being that is completely dependent on you for everything. It's like, man, where is someone's like mind at that you would actually get some feeling of power or, you know, satisfaction in hurting a child? Like, that is a demented, you know, kind of person. And demented people, I don't need it. I don't need to, you know, entertain the ideas of demons and supernatural entities, man. Human beings are quite capable of committing horrors that other people can't even conceive of. You know, that's why they reject these sort of topics of, you know, areas of research, because they can't conceive of someone doing that. It is so foreign to how they are, and a lot of people, I think that people are more or less generally like they are.
It's something that people always say to me if I ever go down this kind of line. They're like, "But why would they do that? Why would they do this? Like, you can't. You're not a psychopath, so how can you'll never put yourself in that mindset, right?" So, yeah, I think that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think that's generally accounts for a lot of the naivete around subjects
But
like this.
I think you know, a friend of mine. I was sort of, maybe I was a bit blackpilled at the time. I'm a bit more optimistic at this current moment. I
What
kind of fluctuate. But a friend of mine
is
said,
black pill pessimistic?
"Yeah, but
Uh,
black pill's like everything's fucked. We're fucked basically."
oh yeah, okay, no, yeah, all right.
And so if I kind of go like this. At that moment, I'm like, "Hey, it's gonna be alright." And a friend of mine said, essentially, all these people that are psychopaths, like Bill Gates, like, look at his parents. His parents are fucking nut jobs. So like, he was probably traumatized from a very early age, and that then creates more traumatized people. This whole war in Israel and all this, it's like, these are all very traumatized people, and I can even see it in my own lineage, just like, not on like some grandiose scale, but I can see from like my paternal grandfather's line, the trauma from his life, at least from where it starts, 'cause I don't know anything beyond that, but I can see how that's cascaded down in how that affects me. You know, I'm
Right.
trying to resolve those things, and I just see, to me, I just see trauma as like chaotic energy that, unless you don't do something like either somatically, or there's many ways, but to sort of process you're just
Mm.
gonna inevitably make another traumatized person. And obviously, if you're just like a little butthurt because your house burnt down when you're 10, I mean, that's pretty traumatic. But like, if your dad's Bill Gates and he's like a blown like anti-human, whatever the fuck he is, man titty health expert, then you're obviously going to create more crazy people.
Yeah, I, to me, that's just a no-brainer. Like, have you heard of Alice Miller?
No.
Oh, she is awesome, man. She wrote a book called um, The Drama of the Gifted Child, and then they changed the title for some reason to The Drama of Being a Child. And I feel like she nailed how this cycle of abuse plays out. And I'll try and summarize it if I can recall, but basically that, you know, a child who is subjected to abusive and, you know, hurtful parenting, they can't experience it and see it for what it is at the time, especially if it's extreme. So they'll, you know, the mind and the body can repress, right? The body can repress the feelings, the mind can literally repress the memories, and even, you know, split off from parts of its own experience. And that's how the child survives. That's what the child does to survive. And in doing that, it creates it has an idealized image of the parents. So it represses its own real experience and creates a false image of the parents. And then it goes through life with this kind of functioning in this way. And that if that doesn't change, there is no, there's no two ways about it. That person will do to their children what was done to them. And she wrote another book called For Your Own Good. And if they have some awareness about, because they might remember, the memories might not be fully repressed. They might remember, oh yeah, I used to get flogged all the time because of this. But you know why? Because it was for my own good. And now I'm going to do it to you because it's for your own good. And unless that person can get in touch with the actual feelings that they experienced whilst being subjected to that treatment and actually see the cruelty of their parents for what it was, they will never change. But in order to do that, that is an extremely painful process to go through. Not only are you going to feel the pain and suffering that you experience as a helpless little child who is completely dependent on these parents, but you're going to see that your parents aren't the idealized people you made them out to be. You did that as a child because you had to. Because maybe if you were hostile or aggressive towards them, the punishment would be even worse. So you create this image that my parents love me and they would never hurt me, and then all this stuff gets buried and not really, unpacked and worked through and resolved. But the person that can do that, the person who maybe starts to acknowledge like they've got some issues in relationships or they're having difficulty with raising their own child, and they start to look back and go, what was it that I went through? What was it actually really that I went through? And they start to make sense of some of these uncomfortable feelings or extremely painful feelings that are coming up. And then they can see how they were treated and they can feel how it felt. Then you're going to do anything to prevent doing that to your child. But you got to see it and feel it for what it really was. Then you'll change the behavior. Then you'll start to break that cycle. And you'll do everything that you can to protect that child from that kind of treatment. That make kind of sense?
Sense. Loads of sense. I mean, I've sort of dabbled in quite a lot of different techniques just out of curiosity. Like, I didn't really have a excessively bad childhood or anything like that, really, at all, by a long stretch. And I think as I've grown older and the more I've looked within and reflected and life experience stuff, I have more respect for them now than I probably ever have. And
well, that's awesome.
The amount of times, I couldn't tell you, the amount of times I've tried some somatic thing, some breathwork thing, psychological thing, where I've just been like, in my head, I'm like, this won't work on me. I'm fucking hard as fuck, mate. And then next thing you know, I'm fucking crying and shit's coming out and you're like remembering stuff. It's like, it's powerful stuff, really. And I think, especially for men, you can't really have emotions like that in a sort of general sort of worldview. But I think you obviously don't want to go the other end and then start like just being a full-blown yogurt weaver. But I think, a healthy balance is key.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, men have feelings, like, period. And that stuff, maybe we could talk about this some other time. I love talking about some of this rubbish that's going on in this like world of like dating and all these like, what men are and what women are and all these dynamics between men and women. But, the bottom line is that, suppressing your feelings isn't authentic and it's not healthy. But integrating them, embracing them, accepting them, and expressing them when it's appropriate, that's masculine. You know, you're not meant to be this fucking one-dimensional cardboard cutout, you know, automaton. Like, you're meant to feel. And to me, feelings are kind of like the colors that would be, you know, adding to the painting. It's not just black and white, you know, and it is hard. I think, you know, that's a realm that maybe it would be okay to say that the woman, the female, is more familiar with that realm than we are, and women can help, you know, men sort of negotiate that side of themselves. And I'd say that men generally, you know, are more directed towards the external world and have more proficiency there. And the man will, you know, do, you know, assist, guide the woman in the external world. You know, it's not that she can't do it herself, but men just generally seem to be more proficient there. The
Yeah,
woman is more proficient in the
this
inner
idea
world.
this idea that we have to be equal is, I think, ridiculous. I think we both have strengths and weaknesses, and then obviously that union working together is the jam, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's the balancing of these things. You know, you don't want to be an imbalanced, you know, human. Like, that seems to be what a lot of that, you know, esoteric philosophy and spiritual stuff is talking about, is like uniting the masculine and feminine, you know, qualities within yourself, whether you're a man or a woman, and not being completely, you know, dominated by one or the other. And then you have like a more of a balanced, you know, sound, rational, but also feeling. You know, a rational person who's in touch with his emotions or her emotions is going to be a more just, I don't know, I
Authentic.
feel like those people move differently in the world, you know. They do.
Because you kind of touched on it, but well, firstly, I wanted to congratulate you on becoming a father. I'm sure that's
Well,
no
thank you.
everyday experience. I'm curious
Absolutely
for
not.
your take on the state of childbirthing regarding like the hospital system. Did you witness that, or did you have a home birth? What was, yeah, anything you'd like to share on that kind of line?
Yeah, absolutely. I can talk about that for a bit. We would like to have had a home birth, but it costs, we couldn't afford it. Cost about $5,000 just to have a midwife come out to your place where we live. And apparently there's only like two in the area that do that. I could be wrong, but it was definitely $5,000 just to have them come out and deliver the baby. So we chose to go with having the birth at the hospital. And we just did a lot of homework beforehand, because I've heard some pretty, you know, unpleasant stories about people's experiences, you know, with having the birth at the hospital because of the hospital interventions. You know, my sister went through that, and a good friend of mine from high school, he said he was, you know, got to the point where he was almost ready to start swinging. You know, just things got that out of control and that hectic. And so we got given a book, which my sister also had, and one of the authors is Dr. Thomas Cowan.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Did you mention him to me the other day?
Yeah, I read
Yesterday.
Contagion Myth. That was the one I read by him.
Right. Okay. Well, we just armed ourselves with as much knowledge as we could. So we wanted to know what are all the procedures and the times that they're going to want to potentially intervene in some way. And what do we need to, you know, just to prepare ourselves? Well, first of all, we we had a birth plan. So we went in there with a very clear birth plan, and we knew all the stages where they might try and intervene with something. We were very clear that we wanted a natural.
With the drug, sorry, and what do they try and push a C-section, this kind of thing? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, those sorts of things. And we'd even decided to stop using the ultrasound when we learned a little bit about ultrasound. We just like went, nah, that's done. And that was sort of relatively early on. And we had 2 scans, and then we read about some of the risks associated with ultrasound, and she just said, not doing it. Use the pinards. They use the pinards for I don't know how long, a long time, up until ultrasound was introduced, which is not that long ago. And it's like, that works fine.
What's a
And
pinard? Sorry for me, because I'm uneducated on that.
it's like a little cone-shaped thing that they can put on the mother's belly and listen to the baby's heartbeat through it.
Oh, okay, but you wouldn't be well, yeah. You just can tell if it's alive, essentially, right?
Yeah, you can listen to the heartbeat and track the heartbeat. Like the midwife that we had, you know, before leading up to the birth, she was like, "Oh, I haven't used the pinards outside of my medical training," and so she got good at it. She got proficient at it. She's like, "Oh, this thing works, fine." It's just you got to maybe get the stopwatch out on your phone just to track like the BPM or something like that. But otherwise, it's fine. We're like, cool, all good. And then the midwife we had while we're in, when we went in for active labor, she was an older woman and she was a godsend. She was amazing. She understood what we were about and very much respected. She obviously read the birth plan and knew.
You guys knew.
Yeah, she knew, and she was amazing because things did get pretty hectic at one stage. But her presence, her gentle but strong presence was just I felt like, oh man, thank God we had someone like that there. And anyway, she said in all of her years of delivering babies, that was the first time she'd used the pinards in active labor. So we were just dead set clear on what to expect, and we told them, in the birth plan, what we wanted, what we didn't want, and we had a beautiful, naturally birthed little girl.
Did they try
And
and straight away offer the vitamin K, or was that in the birth plan?
yeah, we said absolutely no vaccines
And
of
they
any.
respected all that.
Well, our midwife was awesome. She said, I'm going to ask you because I have to, but I already know what you're going to say. She goes, vitamin K hepatitis shots. We were like, no, thanks, all good. And, did my homework. The vitamin K it's not even, it's a synthetic
It's
vitamin.
ridiculous.
It's not a naturally occurring vitamin. And I was thinking of like pulling up the ingredients. I was like, oh, maybe we'll talk about vaccines and we can go through the ingredients. Because when you look at that stuff, there's not one single thing. And I don't know who I don't know how many people take the time to do that. I get the impression that not many, but I always would start looking up the ingredients. Then I'm like, I don't even know what these things are. So then I pull up the MSDS sheets, and most of it's like poison.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
mean, we could do a whole episode literally just on that.
dude, I'd be happy. I would be happy to do that. I researched vaccines for so long. There's so many ways you can come at that issue from that just pulls the rug out from under it. The ingredients is just one of it.
It's a complete scam. It's a complete scam. I mean, the thing with the vitamin K, I always think, is like the actual sheer volume of the thing they're going to give to a baby is actually so large for the size of a newborn baby. It's not like a grown adult where you've got like a bigger meat suit to spin it through, but yeah, just even that, it's just ridiculous.
It's crazy, man. Like that little child gets everything it needs from the mother's breast milk. And if that mother is on a nutrient dense, diet, a clean, healthy, diet with lots of meat and animal fats and, butter and all that good stuff, she's fine. You can't beat that. No injection from big pharma, of their synthetic vitamin K along with the other, shitty ingredients that are in there. That doesn't do a goddamn thing for that little child.
Did you test it for poison before letting your child have some?
What, the breast milk?
Yeah.
Nah, after.
Oh, you like that? You test it for poison first, huh?
No, there's no poison in there.
No, good lad.
We got Elle onto a pretty, good diet with doing things that we never, I've never bought chicken livers and made pate and all this sort of thing before, but just trying to get good, clean, organic, for the most part, home cooked food for like most of the time. Occasionally we just like can't be fucked getting a pizza, but most of the time we're eating at home, and that takes some commitment, and it takes time, but it's worth it. Like, food is so important.
It pays dividends. It's definitely my biggest area of information, I guess, during this whole like holistic health thing, because I've obviously, like I said earlier, I've been led down many rabbit holes, and the whole vegan propaganda, vegetarian thing was a big thing that fucking pottinged me, basically. It stunted me, which I definitely didn't need. So yeah, I think food, yeah, cooking at home is, if you want to avoid oil, it's pretty much the only way you can do it, really.
And trying to avoid the GMOs, trying to avoid all the other things that are put in there to like preserve, or what is it, the salt, it slips my mind right now, but all the preserved meats, all this, what do
Oh
they put in
yeah.
there? I've forgotten.
Oh well, the nitrates and stuff.
Yeah, the nitrate, sodium nitrate, that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
There's
all
just
these
so much.
food-like substances. That's what I like to call them.
Yeah, that's a good name for them. Or you go to get some hot cross buns and they've got like 50 ingredients. It's
Yeah.
like, how does a hot cross bun have 50 ingredients? Like, what's going on here? Like, I'm just nah. It's not. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it should just be
So
three things.
pretty much, yeah, exactly.
Well, okay, look, I've got to wrap this up in a bit, but I've got for the first time on the show, due to our statistics, we only get about 10% of listeners that make it all the way to the end, Paul. So for those, I'd like to reward them with a quick fire round, if you're up for it.
A quick fire round. Okay,
Quick
go
fire
for it.
round. We've never done this before. We've got the
All
new
right.
camera, we've got the new mic. We should bless it with a new quick fire round. Okay, so this is real event or false flag with Paul Devins. Bay of Tonkin,
False flag.
moon landing,
Bullshit.
9/11.
Um, we're talking about like the official narratives.
Oh yeah. Is
Bullshit.
it a real event or false flag?
Well, the towers definitely came down. I'm not disputing that, but planes flying into them and Osama bin Laden conducting the most elaborate. Nah, get the fuck. Nah,
What
bullshit.
about Trump's assassination attempt?
Uh, don't buy it. It's made for TV.
What about I might get my dates wrong here. Was it October 7th when the Hamas guys parachuted in and shot up a load of ravers?
I don't know about that one. What was
Oh,
that?
okay. I don't know if it's the right date. Was it October, November? I can't remember. Basically, the one thing that kicked off the last round of Israel shelling the shit out of Palestine was allegedly Hamas took a load of parachutes and then like went over the border to a fucking psytrance rave and just shot up a load of hippies.
Okay, it's the
It's
first
worth
I've heard
looking
of it.
into.
All right.
And yeah, I would say what I would love to do, because I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. Yeah, we should do another one where we go full ingredients, Justine Mollis and Susan Humphreys vibes, and
I'd be happy to do something like that, man. Like I'd be happy to do some homework beforehand, and we could
yeah,
sort of
for sure,
dive into
definitely.
something a bit more specific if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm up for that. I think we'll have a little brainstorm, but I think the vaccines could be a good one. I also
Yeah.
I think brainstorming some other alternative solutions to the situation we're in could be a good
Oh,
one.
has got some. I've come across recently. There's a guy called Derek Bros, and I think he has some really good stuff in terms of solutions for this big tech stuff. I sort of just encountered him recently. He was on the Corbett Report with James Corbett.
Oh
The
yeah.
title caught me. It was opting out of what was it? Opting out of I don't know. I can't remember. Opting out of the technocracy or some shit like that. And he's good because there's solutions, and his solutions he's implementing. He's bought the land. He's got the people like the and he's talking about like the kind of point where you're setting up like trade routes between the people that have this land and who are just outside of this digital, you know, prison or whatever you want to call it, this brave
Hmm.
new world.
What was his
The
name
thing,
again?
Derek Bros, and
Derek Bros.
I think his channel is the Conscious Resistance.
Yeah, I think I'll write that in the show notes as well. I think the day Corbett Report got kicked off YouTube, that signified the end of the good days of YouTube. That really
Well,
was.
do you know he's
Back,
back
back,
on?
is he back on YouTube?
Like like a week ago.
No.
Yeah,
What, on
he's back on.
the same
Back
channel?
on. Yep, and all his content is still there. Apparently, all his subscribers are still there. He just did this video just going, "What is going on here?"
What?
And there was the same thing happened
What?
with someone else recently. Yeah,
That's
so
interesting.
that is interesting.
Oh, I tell you, have you come across a gentleman who goes by the name of Wakey Wakey?
No,
I've invited him on, and he just said he's like, "I'll come on maybe when you're a little bit bigger," but like, I really want him on. He's a big influence in my life, but
right.
in one of his presentations, maybe 2021, he proposed an idea in that which I thought was very interesting as a
Mhm.
sort of solution. It's a bit macabre, but I think it could work. I mean, again, I'm not supporting violence. This is just alleged hearsay, something bullshit. And what they're suggesting is you basically have like everyone who's up for it puts money into this like escrow account, right? And via like some anonymous cryptocurrency would get distributed to the uptaker of the challenge. And essentially on the challenge you have like a hit list with all these cats on there, and they've got a fucking price tag. And I was just like, I mean, fuck.
It's an amusing thought, but I think anyone on that list is probably disposable anyway.
Not the top of the food chain, right?
Nah,
So your
nah,
Klaus Schwabs, your Bill Gates, they're kind of like, they're low
nah.
hanging fruit,
They're
really.
just the public interfacing, you know.
Who do you really think's at the top then? Is it these like Medici's and all this kind of stuff? These people you never see in the public realm.
I don't think I know enough to say, but I think
I wish I could. I wish there was a list.
I definitely think there's some pretty powerful groups, like, but that gets into some of that more weird sort of secret society, sort of, Knights of Malta, these kind of, if you can sort of start getting, maybe IDs on their membership and those, but I just don't see that as the way forward. It's like, to me, I just use a real simple thing in my mind. It's like there's a poker table and the game's rigged. Like, do you really want to, spend your energy trying to get like a new croupier or like bringing it up with the hotel management or like, no, just grab your chips and fucking walk away. Like, walk away and create an alternative. Pull your energy out of that system. That system is beyond restoration, in my opinion. It has been designed, huh?
I mean, my only point would be like, I feel like they've pacified us a little bit with sort of, peace and love, like, which I'm all for. But I'm just saying, like, let's say we splinter off, we build a new society, it's all hunky dory, and then they start going, yeah, and they're like, let's release the white phosphorus, and we're just like, oh, I didn't consent to this, and now we're melting. Like,
Well,
I'm
I
probably
don't
being a
think
bit
that's
too black pilled again.
I don't think that's a reason not to do it.
No, good point. Good
Again,
point.
again, that's people. There can be all the speculation in the world, but like I like what you said about the cream and the milk. Like it probably doesn't. You just need a small percentage of that cream. I mean, I think the movers and shakers that really establish things have always been small in number anyway. But if you can get like those innovative, creative, active people, enough of them together. But I like what I was listening to one of Derek Bro's things the other day, and he's talking about the community that he's setting up, and he had this little sort of like symbol or structure, and part of the structure was mindfulness, but it wasn't in its usual context. He was like, for people who are going to come and be a part of this community, this is one of our values. And what that means is that you're someone who is working on themselves. And it's like, what good is a breakaway, group of people who have no psychological insight and have no intention of bettering themselves? Because at the end of the day, I think there is a spiritual component to all of this stuff. And when you have a mass of people not wanting to do that inner work and not wanting to heal themselves, somehow that manifests in the physical reality. I'm not doing this justice right now because we're just sort of wrapping up, but it's you want it can't be done with like consciousness being left out of the equation.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
I've experienced that firsthand.
Right. So that needs to be there. And, if all the people who aren't interested in doing that kind of work stay in the old system, how long is it really going to be? How long is it going to last? How long is it going to be sustainable? How's it sustainable anyway? It's completely inconsistent with like the nature of human beings. I know they're putting immense time and money into, eroding that, what makes you human. So you probably, might be happy in there and content. I don't know. But I'd say anyone who is truly conscious and cares about freedom isn't going to want to be involved in that, because it's the kind of you're losing that. It's like you're getting all these benefits at the cost of your independence, and I don't know. I feel like, as pessimistic as I might sound sometimes, and I don't mean to be, I do think that there is an increase in people who are, getting to grips with some of this stuff, man, and they're bouncing. They're looking for alternatives.
I think COVID backfired massively.
Yeah.
That's why I think they had to go back to the drawing board and come up with another plan, because I think they didn't expect. Like, I know people that were not awake in the slightest, would never even entertain anything like that. And now they full blown don't trust a fucking word of anything.
Yeah.
And like before that, they would have gone along with any propaganda.
Yeah.
I think it was a big catalyst. And maybe this entire thing, maybe all this World War III, smart city, blah, blah, fear, doom impending, maybe it needs to happen as a big enough catalyst, because inherently humans seem to be like, we do like, just like, I can't be fucked to set up a new society like right now. Like, I'll do it. Do you know what I mean? But I got shit to do tomorrow. I got this cat that I've got to feed, and like, I mean, Rolls writing some emails. Like, I've already got a job. But I think when the dog's at the door,
yeah,
people start, like, the catalyst makes people happen. So I think what's going to happen.
I hope so. And then on the pessimistic side, I'm like, well, it didn't happen in China. But maybe it will. Who knows?
Don't know. I think we don't hear of the dissenters there.
Yeah.
Firstly, because Mao did a good job of pretty much exterminating all of them.
Yeah.
But I think, I see all the races on the earth in human form as almost like different character builds on a video game, if you will. Like, I think we've all got pros and strengths and weaknesses. And I think, like, for example, like black people, really good at running and will always win medals in Olympics doing that. But they just have different bone density to white people. So they're just not as good at swimming. That's not something opinionated. That's just a fact, right? That's not like, there's no, I'm not putting anything on that, right? So I think we've all got like different powers. And I think maybe the Han race, the sort of, the Han people, they may be slightly more obedient in their nature.
The what people, sorry?
The Han, like the Chinese.
Oh yeah, okay, gotcha.
I think they might be more obedient in listening to that authoritative figure.
Well, it would certainly seem to be the case, or maybe that's what happens after living under sort of like imperial systems for long periods of time. Like, who knows? I don't know, but it is.
But then saying that, the Hong Kong people, they weren't having it when China started encroaching their control back over there. I don't know, man. It's a tough one. But yeah, we can only see what happens in time. But look, I will let you enjoy the rest of your day. I am going to have to love you and leave you. But I think, let's plan something, and we'll come with a more focused one. Okay.
I'm down with that, man. I like the sound of it. Sounds good.
Sweet. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure catching up, my man. And I will see you when I'm looking at you.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, thanks for having me on, and yes, I've enjoyed the chat.
Before I let you go, if people want to get in contact with you, what do you want to give your YouTube or any information, or just keep it?
Oh man,
leave me alone.
My YouTube channel is a bit neglected at the moment. I am working. I'll plug something next time. I've got a website that I need to get finished, and up and running, and I don't know. I guess a lot of things have just been put on the back burner with having a newborn, but
of course.
I will definitely have something to plug next time. And if people want to see those Port Arthur videos, they can. Oh man, I can't even remember what I called them. Port Arthur.
It's the Port Arthur Massacre part 1, 2, and 3.
Gun control or something.
Yeah.
Port Arthur Massacre and gun control.
I'll link the first part, and then people can find it from there.
All right. Yeah. Sweet. Happy days. Okay. Sounds good, man.
All right.
I'll chat to you soon, eh?
Ciao for now.
Right. Catch up.
This podcast is